Vince, are you ready for rapid fire?
On that note, how could you not be ready for rapid fire? That's my question.
That's right, Craig. Kickball, my glory days. That's right.
Darn right. Kickball is not what it used to be. That's all I got to say.
Do they still play kickball? Like,
Yeah.
is that still a thing?
Oh, yeah. But now you don't really have
Yeah.
bases. They put mats out,
No, I don't even
running
wanna hear
into
about
each
it then.
other,
Forget it. Marcus Freeman is a guest on the most recent episode of the Joel Klatt podcast. The Fighting Irish head coach had an interesting take on where college football could be headed in the future. Here's what he had to say.
Start adding in TV money, you start adding in scheduling. There's a lot of money involved with college football. And there might come a time where there might be an outside entity that takes college football away from the NCAA. I don't know, right? The future's uncertain, I say. But I could see a college football system where everybody's independent and somebody else is very similar to the NFL. Somebody else is scheduling the games when you play each other, and then all of a sudden it's not based off TV deals or with your conference anymore, right? And it'll be based off regional location and things like that.
Okay, so Vince, you're kind of making a face. Maybe I know where you're going with this. Would college football be better off with what Freeman is describing there, where, it's basically more like a pro setup than what we have right now in college football?
5 years ago, I would have said, hell no. I just like the pageantry and the tradition of college football. I would have said no. But with the way things are trending, the way things are going with conference expansion and, to the point of our Big Ten discussion earlier, right? They're not a regional conference anymore. They are a nationwide conference. The SEC is pretty much nationwide, it feels like, anymore. Like the ACC is nationwide. So, what are we doing? Like, that makes no sense for any other sport not named football. Mm-hmm. And so I'm actually on board. Just peel football out of the equation. Let them go do their own thing. And obviously the money will funnel back into the schools. And so you're still paying for all the other sports, which is fine. And then you go back to regional conferences with everybody else.
Yeah,
makes more sense than anybody can understand at this point. Just do it. I'm fine with it at this point. Just do it.
That's the thing, is what he's describing is old conferences, like
I know, right?
8, the Big 8,
Seriously,
the SWAC,
or like we're going full circle here.
That's right. That's what he's describing: shrunken down conferences, playing more regionalized, and especially considering we do have a playoff that's already expanded once and is going to expand again. I think that you would be much better off with a system like this, where you're playing a little bit more, regionalized in focus, but then you also make kind of a couple of different trips, out to maybe each coast or something like that. And I think it makes a lot more sense to do it that way. They've pushed it, as he said, TV money is obviously driving this thing. And if you if you sort of centralized it like this, like he's describing, there's going to be a big pot of gold basically for everybody. There's going to be big TV money for everybody. The only question at that point is, like, the Power Four as we know it right now would obviously survive. Of those schools, who maybe gets left out, and what happens to the group of 6 now type programs, the MACs and the Mountain West and those kind of conferences. Like, would they be able to survive in a system like that?
Right, because they get their money from going on the road and getting their butts kicked, right? So that's where they get a lot of their money, and it makes total sense. They would just have to have a new normal. They'd have to figure it out, you know what I mean? And there's going to be those quote unquote bubble teams that might get left out if they do like 50 teams or 60 teams or whatever, and I'm sure they're going to have a problem with it, and I get it, but somebody's got to get left out, and then they just have to make their living in the Mountain West or the MAC or the Pac-12 or whatever it ends up being, you know what I mean? So it's going to be a new normal for everybody at that point, and they're just going to figure it out.
Toonsa says, what about the contracts the schools have with the current conferences? Are they going to buy them out? This wouldn't happen tomorrow. This is a longer term play, is what he's talking about. And I know that there's been talk about super conferences and all that different kind of stuff. That's kind of part of what he's describing here as well. But I think we're we're at a minimum 10 years away from that. Like, that is the soonest I think something as drastic as this happens. And again, if it gets to that point where you blow it up and you start from scratch, basically with what Marcus Freeman was describing there and what some other people have described in, in different configurations, then in that case, again, it's much more like the NFL, where you have an AFC package that is predominantly CBS. You have an NFC package that is predominantly Fox. But, like all the TV networks are going to be involved in this, and they're all going to be paying large sums of money.
Yes.
And, you're like, it's all going to go into a centralized pool, and everybody's going to be sharing in that, so it would look much more centralized, like the NFL, with multiple TV contracts to all the TV networks that would be involved in that kind of thing.
Yeah, 100%. There would be so much money being thrown around if that happens.
Oh, I know.
I mean, it's going to be a free-for-all. It's going to be an absolute free-for-all. And every school will be happy that they did it, because they will make so much more money than they're making now.
Mm-hmm. Freeman and Joel Klatt recorded that podcast inside the Notre Dame locker room, and Klatt shared some of his thoughts on that setting.
To break it to all of you out there, but we are actually sitting in, this is my singular favorite spot in all of college football. This is the locker room at Notre Dame Stadium.
I appreciate that. We're going to make sure we get that message out there a little bit more.
I'm sure. It's incredible. You've mixed, and obviously they did this before you were the head coach, but mixing the old with the new and going out the door and down the tunnel and all the history, and yet it's a modern program that is excelling. Like, all of that, I walk into this building and it is just quintessentially college football. Yeah. So it's really cool.
All right, Vince. So Joel Klatt, very in on the modernization mixed with the tradition of Notre Dame. That modernization aspect of it didn't happen overnight. How important do you think that is in today's college football world, that Notre Dame caught up in that aspect?
Crucial. It's 100% crucial. Like, they absolutely needed to have that done. I mean, they've got one of the best indoor facilities, obviously. They're putting in the new building that's going to be state-of-the-art. But you also have to have a touch of the history, the tradition, because that's what Notre Dame is. You can't focus on one and leave the other one behind. There does have to be a marriage to that. And I think the locker room is a perfect example of that, right? Because it's still got the brick. It's still got that old feeling, all that, but they still got mood lighting in there and flat screen TVs, and all that kind of stuff. So, it is kind of the perfect marriage of everything that Notre Dame wants to be. They want to be a team and a program that is built on tradition, but they're also on the cutting edge. And that's exactly what they need to be. And people forget, they only use that locker room on game day. Like, the locker room they're in every day is across the street over at the Goog, and they're building another one at the new building. They spend way more time over there than they do in the game day locker room. You know what I mean? So
absolutely.
And I don't know if that's commonplace for schools. You know what I mean? Because you always see these amazing locker rooms that the teams have and stuff. Are those their game day locker rooms? Are those their practice locker rooms? Are they one and the same? I don't know the answer to that, because I'm only privy to Notre Dame, but they're only in there 6 times a year, which is kind of wild.
Yeah, but I agree with what you're saying. It is absolutely crucial that they caught up. And I was thinking about this when I heard Joel Klatt say this, and just how impressed he is, because for so long, basically the attitude from the Notre Dame side, especially I think higher up, was, we're Notre Dame. That's all we have to sell. We don't need all these bells and whistles and all that stuff. You've talked about this before. Think about, this was 2004 when you and I started doing radio together. Mm-hmm. And the coaches' press conferences, Bob Davie and Tyrone Willingham, Notre Dame didn't have the setup, other than their post-game press conference type stuff. The weekly Notre Dame football head coach's press conference was out of WNDU, the TV station, which is obviously, just right next to.
It's on campus technically, but it's on the other side, way over by St. Mary's and Holy Cross.
That's where you did that. They didn't have the Goog yet. And then, You know, they build the Goog, and so that, you know, that takes a step in the right direction, but there's still a lot of things lacking, you know, again, like in terms of modernization. Now, you know, the weight room, you know, was way better than what they had before.
Oh,
And, you know,
yeah.
the facilities obviously started to improve, but, you know, like the Campus Crossroads project, when they brought that in and they expanded the stadium, I know a lot of people didn't like that, but they literally, going back to, you know, pre 2005, when Charlie Weiss started doing press conferences inside the Cook, like they've got full like TV stations and side stations inside the Notre Dame football stadium now, in, you know, in like classroom space, and the ability to offer, you know, different majors and different classes that weren't offered before, you know, that all are a part of this stuff. And then, you know, like you said, all the other facilities that are coming along as well. So they've just like, I mean, it's been 25 years, so that you would hope that they would, but they have done just a great job of balancing both the tradition and, you know, modern advances in technology and everything else. And like, I think that they're really in a sweet spot. It feels like right now with the stuff that they're doing.
I agree. I mean, you know, the building that they're putting up, the new building, I can't remember the name of it, something Family Hall. But anyway, the new it looks exactly like all the other buildings on campus. I mean, so they're keeping that type of tradition, you know, all of those different things. And so I like that. One of the reasons I like Notre Dame is because of the callback to the tradition and all of those different things. And it's what a lot of fans like about Notre Dame. And so you want to hold on to that. You want to keep that. But you also have to be on the cutting edge. I mean, that's how, look, Marcus Freeman is an amazing recruiter, and he's got amazing recruiters on his staff, and he's got a great recruiting, you know, network set up and all of these different things. But if you're telling me that it doesn't matter that they've got a beautiful indoor facility and they've got a beautiful locker room and they're building a brand new building that's going to be football only, if you're telling me that doesn't matter, then you're not really telling yourself the truth. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
All of those things together.
But there is a balance now between what you need in facilities and how much has to go into NIL. You know, maybe revenue sharing helps kind of balance that out again. But, you know, like, yeah, it's a lot different. It's just night and day different.
Oh my gosh. I mean, football locker room used to be in the
I remember
Center.
like what is the Chivarelli Lounge now?
Yeah.
You know what that is, right? Like the
it's where we used to do the press conferences.
That used to be where the post-game press conferences is. And what that was just like a little side room that had, you know, like one of those collapsible partitions in the middle that just like, you know, looked like your run-of-the-mill room. And sometimes they would do some post-practice stuff there, but they have obviously fixed that up and they're able to host people.
It's strictly for recruiting now.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
That's all it is.
Exactly. Well, every once in a while, you know, like they've done a couple press conferences there. Like they did that soccer press conference there last summer.
Okay.
They did Sean Stifler's introduction there. That's where they
non-football
did his press conference.
things.
Yeah.
But it makes sense that it's also the recruiting lounge because it's connected to the locker room. Like it's on the correct side of the tunnel to connect to the locker room. The new press conference, quote unquote, area is now on the visitors side.
But again, you know, that's because that's where literally, you know, like the locker room is on the other side and they would bring the players in from that back room, you know, those back doors, you know, into that room.
Right.
And and it is right there. And I'm sure Joel Klatt probably walked through the Chivarelli Lounge.
Sure.
When
I'm sure that was there was some serious butt kissing going on there by Joel Klatt. Now maybe he's being honest. Maybe he's being honest.
I mean, it's his podcast.
You're right.
It's like I'll take him at his word on that.
He knows what he has to say to get another one-on-one with Marcus Freeman in the future. All right.
That's right. The challenge becomes when he's interviewing Dabo and he doesn't give Dabo the same kind of compliment.
Right. So. Here's what I will say. The backdrop of the locker room, the way they had it set up for that interview, because I did watch that interview on the way home from Hillsdale on Monday. You? Yeah, so I saw the whole interview. Just the mood lighting in the back and the locker room. I mean, they had it set up real nicely. There's no doubt about that. I mean, that's the thing. That is college football, right? Like that. That's college football, man. So it was awesome.
So Grayson McKeough has McKeough. I don't know exactly how you say his last name.
Got me on that one.
He committed to Notre Dame today. Breaking news during the show. The offensive lineman. It was between Notre Dame, Penn State, and Texas. So we were talking earlier in the show about how many commits they would get. They get their first commit of the uncommitted guys who visited Notre Dame last weekend in that big weekend. They got literally and figuratively a big one in Grayson. So big news for Notre Dame there.
Yep. And I do believe, based on the chats that I'm getting, there will be a show here momentarily. So kind of stay tuned for that. It's where you got to hit that notification bell so that you know when things are happening on the spur of the moment. And here's what else I'll say, because we are talking about recruiting, and you're not going to hear a lot of that on this show, but there's going to be a few shows here, impromptu style, over the next week and a half, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it is, when this crop of kids that were on campus at Notre Dame, if they decide to choose Notre Dame, there's going to be shows. So
embracing all that tradition and modernization while they're
that's
there.
right. That's right. So you got to have that notification bell clicked if you want to know when those recruiting or those commitment shows happen. So come on now.
Okay. One final thought from Marcus Freeman with Joel Klatt. He talked about, you guessed it, the future of Notre Dame USC.
The thing about rivalry games is nobody cares what the record is.
That's right.
You win that game, you view that season as a success.
And Michigan last year with Ohio State.
Amen. So for us, one of them that is continuously brought up here in the last month or so is the rivalry we have with USC. Before I ever got to Notre Dame, there's memories I have in my head of great plays in the USC Notre Dame rivalry. And I think it's important to continue that rivalry. And so if they ask my opinion, I want to continuously play USC every year, and it takes both parties to tangle, right? And it's got to fit both institutions. And, they're in a conference, we're not. When do we play? All those different things. But I think it's important that we continue to have this rivalry. So,
Vince, honestly, I don't even know what to ask about this one. I just felt like he talked about USC, so we, pretty much had to play it. We've said our piece pretty much on this thing.
Right.
Well, I don't know. What do you think?
Here's my takeaway.
Okay.
Here's my takeaway. So was a couple of weeks ago, we had the sit down with Marcus Freeman and around the conference table and all of that. And obviously this topic came up, and he very clearly said, if it's up to me, we play this every year. I don't care where, and I don't care when, right? He's very clear on that. We're 2 weeks removed from that, and he's still saying the same thing over and over again. So he is doubling down on the fact, like, if this comes out that this series is getting canceled, it won't be because of Notre Dame. Like, and I'm cool with that. He only has so much power as the head coach when it comes to scheduling. Yeah. But he's doubling down. He's saying we want this.
Every time he gets a chance, he's saying it. I'm guessing, it'll probably be within the next few weeks, maybe a month from now or so, when they do that, like the Sports Center Blitz and all that different stuff, when they pack up and go out to Connecticut, New York, and all that kind of stuff. I'm sure it'll come up at that point, and I'm sure that he'll say the exact same thing once again, which is good for Notre Dame. Like Marcus Freeman doubling and tripling and quadrupling down on, we want to keep playing USC. Just say it every chance you get the opportunity to.
Agreed. Love it.
We talked all about some of Notre Dame's top plays of the last 25 years on yesterday's show, and Domer Grizz said on our Champions Lounge that the top plays topic got him thinking about the worst plays of the last 25 years. He nominated two. Pat Dillingham, when he said, "Here, you take it, just don't hurt me," to the Boston College linebacker en route to like 7 turnovers the week after beating number 1 Florida State, is what he said. He said it was deja vu all over again. I will correct one thing. 1, there weren't 7 turnovers. I looked. 2, Florida State was ranked 11th the week before. I had forgotten that it was the week before Boston College. It was like basically like, it was deja vu all over again to an extent, with 1993. But that is a very good nominee. 10 men on the field against Ohio State, he said as well. One. I guess my question is, like, do we really want to go down this road? Like, can you think of, like, do you want to subject yourself to the misery of trying to think of the worst Notre Dame plays of the last 25 years?
Well, if we're talking about the ones that just stick with you in the negative way, right? Bush push comes up. The ending of that Michigan game comes up. I mean, there's a lot of heartbreak when it comes, Boston College, 93.
The Mario Manningham Michigan game. Do you remember that when he got 3 touchdown passes against Notre Dame? I think you were there with me for that one. Yeah.
Yep. So I mean, look, we don't want to go down this road because
Little
there's
Giants,
so much positive. Oh, that was
Giants
awful.
at Michigan State.
Listen.
And by the way, like you talk about, we started the show about officials screwing up a call with David Grimes and that overturned catch at Stanford. Michigan State still should have been flagged for illegal contact. They were blocking downfield.
Yes.
When the ball was in the air, before the pass was even thrown, and while the ball was in the air, they were blocking downfield on that play. That never should have been.
There's so many wrong things about that play. It was delayed game. There's all kinds of issues. And then, Michigan State's head coach had a heart attack that night. Remember that?
Yeah.
So I will not say what I wanted to say, but that was an awful game. That was an awful ending to that game. It's an awful ending. And I believe it was Zbikowski that fell over. He just tripped. He fell over. It's awful. It's awful.
I don't think Zbikowski was playing
Was it not
game.
Zbikowski? It was one of the defensive backs just fell over.
That was a Brian Kelly game. Game.
Okay,
yeah.
My bad. Just bad.
Harrison
Just
Smith.
bad. Harrison Smith. Thank you. Look at
Thank
that.
you.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere, from the cheap seats, here comes Brian Driscoll with the answer.
Well, I'm listening to you
didn't
guys'
see him
show, and you're depressing the crap out of me with all these games. So I wanted to come in and add some good news. Grayson McHugh just committed to Notre Dame. They beat out Penn
Thank
State.
you for the pronunciation.
So
I had no idea how to say it.
We will go live tonight at 7 p.m. Just wanted to jump in real quick. Or whenever you guys are done. But 7 will be the target.
We'll be done
if you guys
before then.
Go over, we'll go. But we're going to go live at 7 o'clock tonight, breaking it down. So
Love it.
wanted to get some good news in there with the depressing questions.
See, that's what I said.
I
asked him if we even wanted to go down the road of all-time worst plays. Little Giants popped into my head right away.
Yes, one of the all-time worst calls. Armando Allen was not out of bounds on that screen call in 2011 2009 against Michigan. You guys remember that? When he scored that 50-plus yard touchdown in 2009 at Michigan at the Big House.
Oh.
And he scored, and they went and reviewed it and ruled him out, and it was very clear that he did not step out. So that was a terrible.
There's just a lot of heartbreak in the history of being a Notre Dame fan. That's all there is to it.
Not right now, baby. Right now it's going pretty good. Right now it's going pretty good.
Recent history, I'm a big fan. So
that's what I'm saying. Why do you even want to mess up the mojo and talk about the bad stuff at this point?
Because some Notre Dame fans just misery loves company. It's like from that denomination of, I guess, Protestant Catholics or whatever you want to call them, that just like they whip themselves. I can't feel good. I just got to feel bad. So there you go. But we will go live after this amazing midweek mailbag to break that one down. But I think it was Harrison Smith that fell.
Okay. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yep. Makes more sense. Yes.
Awful. All right.
Thank you, Brian Driscoll.
We're back.
Fill in the blank. Vanderbilt quarterback Diego Pavia had some interesting comments about the Big Ten on the Bussin' with the Boys podcast this week. Pavia said, quote, "You want to play with the best. You don't want to play with the Big Ten. You ignore those calls. The SEC, it's week after week. You're going to get beat on. The Big Ten, you're not going to get beat on with the Purdue's, Nebraskas," end quote. And Vince,
wow,
that's blank.
That's look, I'm sure Diego Pavia had some options this offseason because of the season that he had last year. And
apparently he had 4 million options, but he decided to stay at
Vanderbilt, huh?
Instead. Yeah.
Okay, Diego. You know what? Maybe he's just loyal to Vanderbilt and he's loyal to Clark Lee and the all of everything that they've got going on down there. But that shot's fired at the Big Ten, man. Like you had some shots fired. And here's the other thing. Vanderbilt obviously had some upsets last year, and they're going to have to play those teams again this year. And you want to talk about getting beat on. I hope for his sake that his teammates and him can weather the storm of the SEC this coming season. But to his point, though, the bottom end of the Big Ten, the bottom half of the Big Ten is not good. It's just not good football, in my opinion. And it's better than the bottom half of the SEC. So shots fired, yes. Accurate.
So, You think the bottom of the Big Ten is better than the bottom half of the SEC?
I'm saying the bottom half of the Big Ten is not as good as the bottom half of the SEC. So it's shots fired, but I think they're accurate shots. That's the thing. So
no, I think that he is exactly right about this because, again, look, we've gone through and we've looked at Michigan's schedule and Penn State's schedule and USC schedule and Oregon's schedule. Like, they're not playing the murderer's row that Lincoln Riley and USC are making these Big Ten schedules out to be. And like Brett Bielema is saying, well, Diego Pavia is just saying what somebody told him to say, or he's repeating what he heard somebody else say. And it's like, okay, Illinois, you're a little bit better. Brett Bielema has Illinois football playing as well as they have probably played in a couple of decades, but you've got to go out and prove it still. But there's still really, it comes down to like what, 3.5, 4 teams at the top of the Big Ten, and then there's everybody else. So it's definitely not nearly what most of these schools try to make those Big Ten schedules out to be. They're just not nearly as tough. I do think that there is, the SEC can be fairly top heavy at times as well, but at the same time, I do think there's more overall depth in the SEC. And I mean, he definitely knows what it's like to, to take some pounding from some SEC teams since he played them last year. But you're right.
Yeah.
He's gonna get some shots from them again this year now. Because like there's a bigger target on Vanderbilt's back after the season they had last year.
100%. And so I hope they are successful because Vanderbilt winning games last year was awesome. It was a fun ride to watch. You know what I mean? And so I hope that they're just as successful, if not more so this year. I think that would be great. And it would back up the fact that the bottom half of the SEC is better than the bottom half of the Big Ten. It would back that up. You know what I mean? So, look, the hardest part about the Big Ten schedule for USC is the fact that they have to get on a plane and go there. Yeah, that's the hardest part. It's not the actual game itself. It's just flying to wherever you need to fly to. Like, and even that. I mean, these guys fly in the lap of luxury, man. Like I don't know. I'm not feeling too bad for them.
There's been a mini Stephen A. Smith controversy going on for the last few days after he was caught playing solitaire on his phone during the NBA Finals game between the Pacers and Thunder the other day. So, big deal or little deal for Smith to be gaming on his phone during a game he's covering?
This is a tough one for me because, look, it's the NBA Finals, so you probably should be a little bit more locked in. Whether you think the game is boring or it's a team that you're rooting for, you shouldn't be rooting anyway. You're part of the media. But he has to talk about the game. So, like, I feel like he should be more locked in. Now, I will say we have been to Notre Dame games that have been brutally boring. And we're covering the game and we're doing
How
things.
locked in are you over the course of an entire football game when you're there?
I have graded papers during football games. I have chatted with friends during football game. Like
giving yourself away now.
I know. So like, I don't want to be the pot calling the kettle black, but you know where I was dialed in at? The national championship game that Notre Dame was playing in. So I feel like the gravity of the game has to come into play here. So I can't give him a complete pass because it's the NBA freaking finals. You should be a little bit more locked in, Stephen A. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, and they had him kind of in an overflow, seat. It was actually like a seat in the arena. It was like in the arena, but it was like, so it was in the stands, so it wasn't like he was on press row and somebody behind him, had it. And I've heard conflicting reports. Some have said it was while the game it was going on. He's tried to say it was during a commercial break or, it's like, you're definitely not going to get the full context though, when you're looking at a photo of Stephen A. Smith holding his phone. But I mean, your point is very valid. Like anyone who's in the media who's covered a game, I would say most people at some point or another have done something that's not related to the game that they're covering, especially if the game, like if it starts getting out of hand a little bit, your mind starts to wander from time to time.
And look, Tommy's saying he doesn't blame him. It's the NBA and blah, blah, blah. That's his job. His job is to pay attention. His job is to discuss the NBA. I get it from a fan standpoint, Tommy. I'm not watching the NBA finals. I'll be the first one to admit it. I'd rather do anything else than watch the NBA finals right now. That's not the point though. That's his job. So like he should be a little bit more locked in than he was. Like that's the thing for me. Come on, dude.
We're all distracted by our phones though.
Oh, 100%.
That's the bigger issue. I think is like who among us can say that we're not more addicted to our phones than we probably need to be.
I will be the first one to admit it. They are a necessity and they are also a burden, right? Like if I didn't have a phone, I couldn't do my day job because it's constantly emails and chats and all these different things about school stuff. But I'm still walking down the hall, checking Facebook too. Like I saw, I'll be the first one to admit it. You know what I mean? So they are a necessity and an issue. So
Tommy says he's not. I don't know if he put an LOL at the end because I do, like when Tommy's driving down the road, he says he's not addicted to his phone, but he still finds a way, to type stuff in the chat for us during the show. So
you're watching us on the phone too, I believe.
Yeah, exactly.
This is a great addiction to have, by the way. Just saying.
I'm not saying it's bad that you're listening / watching, but so there were multiple skirmishes in the Indiana Fever's win over the Connecticut Sun last night. Guess what? It involved Caitlin Clark. Shocker. Right?
Everybody wants a piece.
Multiple technical fouls dished out when J.C. Sheldon mixed it up with Clark, and then former Notre Dame star Marina Mabrey, who plays for Connecticut, Sheldon's teammate, got in the mix. She kind of bumped Clark to the floor, and then later, Indiana's Sophie Cunningham had a hard foul on Sheldon to keep her from scoring on a layup. So the NBA or the WNBA, no suspensions of any kind were leveled after all this. So what do you think? I don't know how much of the highlights maybe you've got to see.
I saw it.
Busy day that you had. Was it too much or just good hard basketball?
The WNBA needs to be talked about, right? If you're a WNBA executive or whatever, you want your league in the conversation, right? And they're in the conversation because of this. And so I don't really have a huge problem with it. Now, look, I watched the little scuttlebutt. Number one, Caitlin Clark flopped twice, in my opinion, during that little scuffle, right? Now,
it got poked in the eye, it looked like.
Is that what it was? Okay.
That's what it looked like to me. Like Sheldon, it looked like it wasn't like intentional.
Well, it wasn't intentional.
She had her hand at it, and it looked like she poked her in the eye, and that's
right. Now, Mabrey coming up, she bumped her, but she didn't have to fall to the floor. Like, that was a little much. Now, the hard foul, that was legit. Like, that was a legit hard foul. There was no way she was making that layup. She got tackled. Like, there's no way.
And that was the Sophie Cunningham play.
Yes. Yeah. There was no way that was going to happen. Now, I don't really have an issue with the sequence of events from that game. I have an issue with some of the things that other players are doing to Caitlin Clark, like just randomly, like just body checking her and doing some other things. So I do have a problem with that kind of stuff. This stuff, I don't have a problem with it. Mabrey was coming to the defense of her player and like,
well, see, and that's, they brought fine. Like the Fever brought in Sophie Cunningham for a specific purpose. And that was for stuff like last night. Because
there you go.
Her teammates last year when this crap was going on weren't sticking up for her. And so they brought in Sophie Cunningham to be the enforcer. And that's exactly what she did. When she had the opportunity, her team was winning. And the player who started the whole thing, Sophie Cunningham, said, you're going to the floor, and then got right in her face afterwards. And the whole avalanche, they brought in a player who would stand up and basically be Caitlin Clark's enforcer.
I love it.
Like, I've got no problem with that. I've got no problem with Marina Mabrey sticking up for her teammate as well. The exact same kind of role for Connecticut. It's just competitive players going back and forth. I've got no problem with it. Ultimately, it's, it makes the whole thing a little bit more entertaining. I realize maybe the league probably doesn't like some of it, but Stephanie White, the Fever head coach, is called out the officiating. Like, if you're going to let little things go, it's going to come back on you.
Yes.
Ultimately. And you're going to have bigger skirmishes like this in the long run.
And it's been like that in officiating, whether it's football, basketball, whatever. It's been like that since day one. More so in basketball. Like, if you start calling some ticky-tack stuff early, you're kind of setting the tone for what's going to be allowed. Like, that's what you got to do, right? If you let stuff go, then things are going to get let go even longer, right? So I think that I have no problem with the sequence from last night, if that's when it occurred. No problem whatsoever.
Last night.
Yeah, there are a lot of cheap shots going around though. those I have an issue with. Now, again, I'm seeing highlights, so I'm not seeing the context of those cheap shots, right? But it feels like there's more cheap shots going on in other times of games, but that particular scenario, I have no problem with it whatsoever. I like a little, just get after it, man. Get physical. There's nothing wrong with that.
I agree. So you had some difficulties the last 24 hours. Were you able to finish
I did.
the town?
Yes.
Your
that
thoughts?
was a must finish because so full disclosure, right? You guys gave me a hard time about this. It was on Netflix. So I was like, you know what? I got to sit down and I've got to watch it. And so I got through the first half before the 1 o'clock show yesterday, before the big show. And then obviously it went from that one to this one. And so I didn't have a chance to finish it. So I finished it last night before the storm. And it's a good movie. It is like I was not expecting the ending, obviously.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was a very interesting ending. It certainly wasn't a happy ending by any stretch of the imagination, but
apparently there was an alternate ending that they screened where Affleck dies, and test audiences hated it, so they changed the ending around.
I guess I would watching the movie. I don't know how he didn't die. It's like
a lot of bullets flying, man.
Woo, man, and like a lot of automatic bullets flying. You know what I mean? And so the fact that they were able to, I don't want to give a ton away, but apparently I'm the only one that hasn't seen it. So
the movie is 15 years old at this point, so
it's whatever. But I don't know how they got out of a couple of other skirmishes that they were able to get out of, switching cars and doing all these different things. Like there's no way they should have gotten out of the one where they were dressed like nuns. They had no business getting out of that one, and somehow they did, right? And then of course they're robbing the Red Sox. Like that's a ballsy move, man. Like this.
The Lindas want you to open the door.
That was great. The Lindas. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that was it was I was entertained, and that's the biggest part of it, right?
So
I was entertained.
It lived up to the hype.
Those guys were very intelligent with the way they did things, Yep. Just another guy being led by his heart ends up getting him in the end.
You know what your problem is, Vince?
What's that?
You think you're better than people.
We're gonna fight.
Jeremy Renner just had so many good lines.
Yeah, he did. I mean, he was
Joe chiming in the tone blue. Yeah, whatever.
I thought it was good.
Nothing's gonna get 100%, but
yeah. Well,
I thought like a movie like that felt like it was up your alley. So that's why I was shocked that you had never seen it. So
it was good. I enjoyed it. And I thought the acting was really good in it. Had a lot of I don't know. My favorite character might have been the John Hamm character. I thought he was hilarious. Probably not intentionally so, but he was focused on getting this thing accomplished and didn't necessarily follow the rules all the time, which I kind of dig too. So
that's true. Claire, we are a national organization.
That's right. That's good. So it was a good movie. I appreciate the recommendation on that one. That was a good one.
All right. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Glad you enjoyed it. Vince in on the town. So check that one off. Check the box off. Now, if you would just see the Bourne Identity.
I know. I really want to see those too.
That one's hard to find though.
I know.
Because I haven't it only comes around at certain times on the different, maybe because they're releasing the latest Bourne. I think it might be in November or something like that.
So
November
some
or
streaming company will bring it up.
So maybe all the others,
right?
Will because they've been showing the last one, which was called Jason Bourne, which is probably the worst of all the ones that they've done. But the very first one, I think you would. I think if you watch that, you'd be in on the rest of them. So
I'm ready. It's a 2002, so it's probably time that I sit down and watch that one.
Catch up.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's going to do it for tonight. Don't forget, Brian's got the live show coming up at 7 o'clock on the YouTube stream. Grayson, See, I already forgot how to say his last name again.
McHugh? Did he say McHugh?
McHugh. Thank you.
I think I said McHugh. Yeah.
Yep.
It's a lot easier than it looks. I'll just say that.
Yeah. Grayson McHugh, committing offensive lineman. So Brian's going to be breaking that down at 7:00 live show tonight. Hit the like button before you leave. We always appreciate it. And we will talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.